Hey, welcome. Welcome to Ampled Radio on Video, or whatever this will end up being called. Uh, I'm Yancey Strickler, and a fan of Ampled, part of the Ampled journey. And this is Stephanie Pereira. And yeah, who are you, Steph?
I'm Stephanie Pereira. I'm the director of New Ink. New Ink is the incubator that Austin, Roby, and Colin Lewis were a part of, and so they worked on Ampled during their year at New Ink this past year. So I got to know them, their work. We vibed right away. Right at their, I missed their interview, but we met about a year ago this time and talked a lot about platform co-ops and all the good things about cooperative ownership way back then.
Yeah, yeah. And so, yeah, the Ampled folks invited Stephanie and I to have a conversation, and we both said yes because we actually have a long history together. And so my background, my last job was I was the CEO and a co-founder of Kickstarter, and Stephanie and I worked together at Kickstarter for 7 years, 8 years, maybe.
I think 7, yeah.
Yeah, a very, very long time and very closely. And then they're really kind of being in like the trenches of the early creator, professionalizing creator class on the internet era. I feel like both of us being there pretty early. And now I feel like it's like the era is kind of shifting a little bit, right? I'm wondering what do you see? Like you definitely have a very different seat than you used to looking at it.
No, I agree with you, and I'm glad you brought that up. I've been reflecting on that a lot. When we started this call, I noted that you have a transparent speaker and some other Kickstarter swag going on in the background there.
Yeah.
And, I, having been a Kickstarter so long with you, built so many relationships with some of those early Kickstarter creators, people who built their businesses just with some project that they launched on that website. And I've watched them change. I've watched our relationship to the internet change. And I think I've been thinking about it a lot, particularly in the past, maybe it feels like hyper accelerated in the past year, probably, right? Right now I'm reading a book that talks a lot about techno-utopians. And I think that the era of the internet, that when you founded Kickstarter and when I joined, that was still that utopian era. We still did believe that. I remember you all talking about, using the internet to like unlock the keys, or they were the keys to unlocking the gates, and that, then everyone could do anything. I don't think that's true anymore, and I don't think people really sort of believe that anymore. I think the internet's become like a kind of more, it's still a really powerful place, and it's incredible to see the things that happen there, but people don't come in with that wide-eyed energy and positivity, just period, like as the end of the story. Is that what you're seeing or feeling?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I mean, I think, there's the thrill of discovery. There's like the honeymoon period of a relationship. I think all those utopian things about the internet are still true. It's just that they're only part of the story.
They're only part of the story.
And what's been new the past 5 years is the other part of this, like the other shoe dropping. Mm-hmm. And so that's what that's what's most emotionally present. But I think the reality is all these things are true. And yeah, that we're in like a fallow period in terms of our, but I feel like since COVID, that's changed. I mean, the degree to which this is such an accelerationist period, as everyone talks about, I think is really true. But even just in like web culture, just feeling like people building on each other's ideas with this incredibly rapid pace, and this real kind of like free for all, mm-hmm. where something like the co-op model is like truly like on the table in a different kind of way. Whereas before it's like, no, why would you do that? There's all the people with all the power, blah, blah, blah. And instead now there's a recognition that there is a breakdown of many kinds of systems due to this, crazy external event, but that breakdown is happening. We cannot reverse it. Like this is a new reality on the other side. And so these kinds of options become, possible in a very different kind of way. And I feel like that's true to a degree that, and I'm like quite optimistic about change, but like 6 months ago, I would not have, would not have expected.
I mean, 100%. I mean, I think that's what has happened with COVID. I think that sort of like a lot of the sort of entrenched beliefs that we had about what could and could not happen completely were eradicated. So all the stuff that's like, oh, that'll never happen, or this can't happen, because it became very clear as soon as we were all in this scenario that lots of things can happen and lots of things should never have happened. And we have, I think, rapid response has become this a thing that has been really incredibly accelerated by the connectivity and the community of the internet. People are sort of piling on and saying like, I got you, I got your back, and like coming together. Mm-hmm. And I think mutual aid, I mean, the commonness of that is like a topic and a theme, like not just in sort of same as, I would take that from the same space as co-ops and cooperativism. Like mutual aid used to exist in that other marginalized kind of utopian space. And now it's like much more front and center. And it's like a way people are doing business now, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's like a new sphere of competition. How equitable are you?
Yeah,
it's really interesting. I mean, I wonder. New Ink is unique in that, like from the beginning. Shout out Julia Kaginski. From the beginning, there's been this marriage of like art plus business models plus technology, and this idea that like they're not enemies, that they're all sort of building blocks. And you were a part of selecting Ampled to be a part of New Ink, and so you've had an interest in, and I know in some of the blockchain projects that have been through New Ink too. Yeah. There's some of that too. So what is like at the kernel of that, of what's interesting to you about that, and what have you seen?
Well, I think one thing we've talked about, and yeah, definitely shout out to Julia here, because when I took the reins a couple years ago, New Ink had always operated from this place of values. So similar to something you and I have talked about many, many times over the years, which is just having a purpose, having a mission, having a vision, and having core values, and letting your values guide your decision making. If you like understand what that thing is, you can do anything, right? You know how to approach any question. I've actually been thinking about, I'll shout out your bentoism because I've been thinking about that a lot, because I do think it's like, once you know who you are and what you stand for and why it matters, right? That's when you start to be able to make those decisions about future you, future everyone. And so I think that that's what artists and designers are attracted to in terms of the New Ink program. So we're a cultural incubator, but we're also a business incubator. And I think the fact that we're talking about growing a business, and it can be, it's not about for-profit or nonprofit or social enterprise. It's not about status. It's literally just about who you are and what is the change you want to see in the world, and also doing it from a position of an artist mindset. Artists are not thinking about like, I mean, I accidentally somehow ended up in this like Twitter hellscape of like VC startup people. Like Twitter was like, we think you would like this list. And I was like, I hate this list. And I think it's because artists don't, while I care about business and I care about impact, and I care about a lot of the things that Twitter probably saw me writing about, I think artists in general, designers in general, there's just a different way of speaking and being. And I think at New Ink, I'm sorry, I'm like rambling because I'm trying to get to this point, but I think it's the way that artists want to show up in the world and being successful at business should not be two separate things, right? I think that they need to be 100% like the same thing in order for it to be authentic and true and long-term sustainably something that you actually want to be a part of. And I think that that's, what we're trying to do at New Ink.
This is the ultimate hegemonic superpower of capitalism, right? Which is that, it can incorporate that. It's true. I mean, there is something in that. When you have, a site like Mischief, where you have like non-products, being non-distributed, and that is a way to create a high amount of attention, but it's like a form of expression.
Yeah,
is super interesting. I'm curious about like, New Ink is an incubator, but it's also like kind of an institution at this point. What, 7 years, something like that, 6 years in New Ink?
Starting year 7 in September.
Yeah, year 7, and so like, what is institution building in that kind of way? Is that meaningful? Like, what is the, like I'm saying this now, and something I think about people creating paid online communities or more intentional community spaces where I think the goal will not be a profit interest of that group. I think the goal will be a promotion of an idea or of a mindset of, you know, proliferating some concept. And I'm wondering what sense you have of like, what is it like to work in that model? Like, do you look at the New Inc classes as like you're all, you know, there's something shared in them? Is this a nice way to affect change? Is this an effective way to affect change?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's coalition building, right? So, I mean, I think what we're seeing also on the internet that you and I were, you know, when you all started Kickstarter and you and I were trying to figure out like, how do we build community here? There was something sort of very different in that it was, you know, there was a lot of one-to-one and a lot of one-to-many, but now what we're seeing is these larger coalitions, larger grassroots movements. And I think, you know, some of it is organizing around this more intentional community building. So whether it's the group that you've built online through your Bentoism stuff, or the stuff that's happening, you know, through our annual program at New Inc. But when I took over 2 years ago, that was a huge part of the conversation that Julia and I had. She had been working sort of on building a community for 4 years. And, you know, the moment was, okay, we've done this annual program for 4 years. Let's make this a larger conversation. So we actually have this great diagram where at the very center of it is what we call our incubator members. So the people who are going through the incubator program. Then 1 degree out is what we call our community members. These are people who do pay to be a part of the program. Austin will be a community member next year. And these are people who still want to be plugged into the conversation, into the workshops, into the mentorship, into the general sort of just like, what is the energy of the space? And then it goes mentors, and then alumni, and then it's like everybody. And I think that for us, having this really intentional concentric circle, the center of it, incubator, the closer you are to the center of it as an incubator member or a community member, means you're actually co-creating that space. So you're designing that space. So one thing, for example, we're doing very actively, and I think this is what we're seeing on the internet, right? There's 1 million shared Google Docs, right? People are co-writing letters together, 1 million shared spreadsheets where we're like sharing our salary together. I think very related to this cooperative ownership topic that we're here to talk about today. You know, one thing I'm thinking about this year at New Inc. as we kick the program off is like, how do we like open up the books, right? Like we do so much planning, we do so much thinking about how each event goes. Like what are the things we say to people at the top of the event to make sure that it goes well and we're building community and building trust and sharing values? How are people not just getting delivered that stuff top down, New Inc. staff to New Inc. community, but instead, how is the New Inc. community co-creating that content so that we're the top of the program, the 5 things we say to each other are 5 things we all mutually decided over time that has slowly sort of evolved over time together.
So where do you draw, like, so I work with some organizations that are, that have gone full like teal holacracy, you know, rethinking organizations, which is a great book. And I've tried to adopt like the self-directed style where, you know, the leadership is of an idea. Maybe open source projects are probably the best examples of these things. Yeah. You know, I emotionally want to believe in that. And myself as a leader, I desire, you know, shared empowerment. Like the right answer to any solution is like, well, who can step up and lead this? Who can own that? And that is really like, what are sustainable solutions to things? But, you know, how do you balance that with like maintaining a sense of purpose or even maintaining a sense of momentum? You know, I think that's a lot of the tension that comes up and say the fear of a co-op model or of distributed decision-making, which is just like, you get, you know, it could just be hard to move forward. And I wonder if that's something you have any thoughts about.
No, I mean a lot. And I've been thinking about this with co-ops a lot lately, because as you've said, they're definitely on the table at this moment. I know for myself, I feel a lot of angst in that one of the ways our family has food shopped for the past few months is almost exclusively through Instacart. However, I've also simultaneously been reading these horrible sort of like Instacart related employee organizing stories where employees are just really getting the shaft, or not even employees. That's the problem. So I've been trying to figure out like, where is a business, and I'm like dying to actually catch up with Austin on this, but like, where is a business do you draw that line? And I think that this is the space that I'm trying to invest in at New Inc., where we are, I've been trying to design almost like, I'm not interested in a holacracy. I think maybe this is what you're not saying, so I'll say it for you, but I don't think that, for me, I do feel like there needs to be some sort of intentional ownership. I do, however, the reason I'm interested in cooperative models is because that intentional ownership is like of the people. So it's like by us, for us. And I do think you need, I guess in my mind, the ideal business structure, it's like the co-op model is very appealing to me because it's the people who are running the business are the same people who are experiencing and enduring all the decision-making stuff. So what I'm trying to do with New Inc., which is it's a top-down program. There's 4 people on staff plus 5 if you count Karen, who's very involved. And I'm trying to figure out a way to basically, it's a recursive model, or maybe an additive model. So this idea that we like open up, we design, we develop, and then this intentional leadership sort of group comes in, absorbs, strategizes, redelivers, opens up, absorbs, strategizes, redelivers. And in that way, so me, our director of community, our program coordinator, our head of programs, Karen is our, soulmate advisor.
Shout out Karen. Shout out
Karen Wong for always being there. We can continually steer the ship, but we're doing it. I mean, we care. Well, as you've said, New Inc. is like, equity is a core value of ours, and how we create a space that is inclusive, of many needs. Part of that is this process of
right.
Yeah.
So the many needs. Well, the many needs thing is interesting, because like Esther.